It's always sad to see all these old stadiums go. I mean, Mile High went, and now Foxboro gone.
You knew that this was never built to be a premier facility, but you know, it made it 30 years.
The fans sure get their money's worth for it.
Every time I come to Mile High, they get their money's worth. It was a constant Woody Allen moment for 30 years. You never knew what was going to happen.
No matter what building or how great this new building is, it won't erase the great foundation that was built here.
The Broncos at Mile High Stadium transcended football. It was like the world's largest church on Sunday morning, if you will.
This is the 20th edition of Lost Treasures, but it's the first time I'm actually hosting a show from inside a lost treasure. You see, this is the office where we opened all the other shows. As you can see, it's empty now because in August 2001, we moved into a brand new facility. But I thought it was fitting to come back here for this show because it deals with two stadiums like this place that are now history. Foxboro Stadium, the former home of the Patriots, and Mile High Stadium in Denver. In both cases, the new stadiums were built just a few hundred yards away, so the old ballparks were leveled and turned into parking lots. In the spring of 2002, we went back to pay our final respects, and we brought along some people who helped write the history of the two stadiums. It was a very emotional journey.
Well, looking right now, it's kind of a sad, certainly a sad feeling. Looking at the destruction of it, you think back and all the great memories that as a player, that I think as fans, people from inside Colorado and outside Colorado, whoever experienced Mile High Stadium. It's certainly a sad situation where that's coming down. Being part of Colorado and Bronco history will never lose its place in my mind.
Yeah, programs here. Game day program.
Mile High Stadium was one of the NFL's great venues. It was a place you could truly call unique. John Elway's right arm provided a lot of that Mile High magic. But the truth is, the Broncos had a huge home field advantage even before John Elway got there. Their home winning percentage from 1975 through 1981 was .781. That was the best in the NFL, and that was before John Elway ever played it down at Mile High.
Is it to your advantage playing at home?
Oh, of course it is.
What's the advantage? What's the Mile High advantage?
We got the 13th man. We got the cold and the altitude.
It's easy to see why visiting teams hated going into Mile High Stadium. We wired Tom Jackson, number 57, for a game in 1984, and it snowed all night.
Way to hit, Rue! Good spot, Jack.
Way to slow him down!
Even the Green Bay Packers, the team from the frozen tundra, couldn't play in these conditions. The Packers fumbled on their first two plays that night, and the Broncos returned both of those fumbles for touchdowns. But even on a clear day, the altitude in Denver can wear out a visiting player, like Houston's Dan Pastorini.
What do you think will go?
All right, Dan. You're trying 72 you corner again.
Look, you're tired, and our football team's tired.
I'm all
you
right.
Gotta, all right. Well, don't show them you're tired.
Right.
You got to get them
all right.
going.
Fine.
You got
to get them going, Dan.
All right. What do you want, Dan?
When the teams would come in and play, we certainly had the advantage.
Dan, you want some water?
If we didn't have the physical advantage, we had the mental, psychological advantage that these guys would have to be sucking oxygen on the side. Come the third, fourth quarter, particularly the fourth quarter, is that they would lose their air. They didn't have as much energy.
Now, I know something about this altitude factor. That's me in my playing days at Colorado College. Talk about a lost treasure. Well, anyway, we played our home games at Washburn Stadium. And as you can see, we posted the altitude just to give visiting teams something to think about. And we didn't stop there. Oh, no. We put a plaque in the visitors' locker room that read, "This field is named in honor of Morris Washburn, who perished when his lungs exploded from a lack of oxygen during a soccer match in 1901. Now, none of it was true. I made it all up, but it worked. Some guys blacked out just reading that plaque. Kickers had the biggest advantage in that thin air. It's no coincidence that the longest punt in NFL history was kicked at Mile High Stadium. This 98-yarder by the Jets' Steve O'Neill is still in the record book. In 1998, Jason Elam tied the NFL record for the longest field goal by kicking this 63-yarder against Jacksonville. It didn't matter if you were a player or a fan. You always knew you'd get a kick out of going to Mile High Stadium.
The fans sure get their money's worth for it.
Every time I come to Mile High, they get their money's worth.
The fans got their money's worth at Foxboro Stadium, too. And that was the problem. The stadium opened in 1971 and was built fast and cheap. The fans sat on cold aluminum benches, and the locker rooms were the size of closets. When this place was torn down after the 2001 season, most people said, good riddance.
Well, people would constantly call it a dump, and they would call it Kmart, and they would call it a disaster. Nobody ever referred to it as beautiful Foxboro Stadium.
It was just this big, drab, concrete place that, you know, I'm not sure, I think it was like $6 million when they built it. And, I mean, look around, it has like no amenities whatsoever.
You knew that this was never built to be a premier facility, but, you know, it made it 30 years. For those kinds of facilities and to have a sellout for the last 8 or 9 years, I think that really goes to the heart of the New England fans who endured the cold, who endured the bad seats, who endured all of that and have supported the team so long before the Super Bowl.
I managed the stadium for several years, and I got to know every nook and cranny of it, and it was a cold place. The fans that came here to some of the games in December would be 5 degrees, and the wind would be howling, and pretty hardy people to come. And they sure did have a great time.
I think the ambiance here helped to make it a great experience, even though you didn't have the creature comforts. This is New England. We like to rough it a little bit, and no matter how great this new building is, it won't erase the great foundation that was built here.
For their first 10 seasons, the Boston Patriots moved around more than George Washington's colonial army. They had 4 different home fields, including Fenway Park. Now, Fenway is a charming place, but let's face it, it's a baseball park. Seeing Gino Cappelletti kick field goals that landed in the Red Sox bullpen, that just seemed wrong somehow. The Patriots also played home games at Boston University and Boston College, but things were no better there. In 1970, under coach John Mazur, the Patriots played at historic Harvard Stadium, but the pro game didn't seem to fit there either. Finally, in 1971, Patriots owner Billy Sullivan scraped together $6 million to build his own stadium in Foxboro, a little town halfway between Boston and Providence.
Let's face it, if this stadium had not been built, Billy Sullivan would have been gone to Memphis or someplace else because we had run out of places to play. It really meant stability, even though people made fun of it and they said, you know, this structure isn't going to last very long. Well, it lasted 30-some years, as we see, till today.
Try to hit a home run.
Sullivan wasn't as wealthy as other owners, like Denver's Pat Bowlen, but he kept the Pats alive.
He is the father of professional football in this marketplace, and they never had the Lamar Hunt ownership here. They never had the one guy with hundreds of millions of dollars, and so the franchise, you know, always was in a survival mode, and he made it survive, and he kept it going.
I
I can tell you, I'm sure the critics would have criticized, but
he just had a passion for the game, and he went to more banquets, I think, than anybody I've known in an ownership position to sort of spread the word about pro football.
Sullivan needed something for the marquee outside his new stadium. So in 1971, the Pats drafted Vitaha's Stanford teammate and Heisman Trophy winner, Jim Plunkett.
All of a sudden, they got a really quality player and a quality person, and he was able to come here and I think sort of team up with the stadium and really cement it as a long-term institution. I think people can see we really have an NFL team, we really have a facility, we really have a genuine NFL quarterback. This is really an NFL franchise now.
For the Patriots, the 1971 league opener at Foxboro seemed like the dawn of a new era.
First regular season game was a beautiful day. I mean, crystal clear, like today. The Raiders were heavily favored, and we totally dominated the game, running, passing, and Plunkett had an incredible day that day. And I remember people walking out of the stand saying, okay, now we're going to the Super Bowl with this guy.
But things went downhill in a hurry. The Patriots never had a winning record in 5 seasons with Jim Plunkett at quarterback, and their home attendance fell 12% from 1972 through 1976.
This was not a football area, really, from 75 to 85. When I came here, it was, of course, everybody in Boston, Celtics, Red Sox, and Bruins, kind of in that order, and we were an afterthought because we were down the road and not really a part of the Boston community.
They were always like the black sheep. You know, they were like, it's like you have 4 kids, and they were the screw-up kid. They were like the Fredo Corleone. They were the team you made excuses for. They were the team you were afraid to bring up. Like, I remember being in college, and people would say, who's your football team? And I'd say the Patriots, and people would like make fun of me for it. I mean, you could go through any team in any sport, and the Pat Patriot logo has to be the worst logo that anybody has ever come up with. He's like bent over, looks like he's constipated. I think when other people look at the Patriots, they see that logo, and it's like, what, is this like a professional franchise? How did they come up with this guy?
The Patriots did have a run of 5 consecutive winning seasons, starting in 1976, but they couldn't win the big one. Well, that all changed in 1985 when Raymond Berry led them to their first Super Bowl.
that time period there, as I look back on all the experiences I've had in professional football, and people ask me about the greatest thrills I've ever had when I coached. It wasn't one game. It was like a 6 or 8 week stretch. And that Cincinnati game was, man, it was one of them. Came up with a 4th down in about a yard or less. I just had in my gut that we had to go for it. We couldn't give the ball back to Cincinnati at that stage. So we called a ride 24, and Robert Weathers broke the thing for a touchdown. That play is what beat Cincinnati and got us in the playoffs.
It was Robert Weathers' only touchdown of the season, and it set off a wild celebration.
I remember Irving Fryer standing up on the bench and, you know, orchestrating the fans to make noise, you know, when Cincinnati had the ball. And they did. We won the game. We go to the playoffs, and that year we end up going to the Super Bowl. So I think that was probably the day that I saw the sort of the interaction between the fans and the team that, you know, continues to this day.
All those memories came flooding back at the final regular season game in Foxboro Stadium.
In 1971, then Patriots owner Billy Sullivan led a group of businessmen who built a new stadium in Foxboro and kept professional football in New England. Representing the family of Bill Sullivan, his son, Patrick Sullivan.
That was pretty emotional, you know. It was a great honor for the guys. Had a couple of parties. It was really a fabulous weekend. Remember, Russ Francis is a terrific guy. He puts his arm around me, you know. We're on the field, and I hadn't been on the field for 15 years, so I sort of forgot what it was like. He said, you know, I wish your dad was here. And I said, no, he's here. He's here. He'll always be here.
In 1972, we went to Denver to wire the Broncos head coach, John Ralston.
We'll be introducing our offensive team. We'll be introducing the offense today.
Ralston had coached Stanford to 2 Rose Bowls, but this was his first season coaching in the pros, and the Broncos were a real challenge.
Jesus Christ almighty, how can we be that lucky? Now, Tom Graham, let's be a tackler. The quarterback came right by you on that one. Let's be a tackler now.
The Broncos had been around for 12 years before Ralston arrived, and they'd never had a winning season. But he straightened out everything, right down to the sideline markers. And under his direction, the Broncos became a winning team. Those are great memories. But today, memories are all that remain of Mile High Stadium.
We'll miss her, I'll tell you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like, Coach, it's kind of like hallowed ground for me.
Yeah,
I started my career here, and I'll never forget it. I have so many memories about this place. But no, I will always, even when this becomes a parking lot, I'll always treasure this area. It'll be a part of me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a shame, though, to have this beautiful facility torn down. We thought it was the best stadium when we put in the new section, and it just goes to show you. Now you look at Invesco Field over there, you can't believe it.
Doc, I got a football game. Let's go to work. Have some fun. Go down the drive, man.
Ralston is an accredited Dale Carnegie instructor, and his can-do approach to coaching was just what a losing team like the Broncos needed.
Go to work now. Come on,
The positive approach that Coach had helped us tremendously. I knew how important it was. It was easy to get down because we hadn't won. But if we stuck together and played hard and kept a positive attitude, which Coach was talking about all the time, we thought we could get there.
Good job of covering. That's the way, Mike. Everybody good on that. Good, Clem. That's excellent. That's
my very nature anyhow. It is to think that everything is going to come out roses. No matter who we played, I always expected to win, and that's never changed.
John was so enthusiastic, he used to give his special teams a pep talk right on the field.
I almost could look in their eyes and tell that they were really ready to play. But I think I enjoyed doing it because it made John Madden mad. John got so upset because I was out in the middle of the field before the game.
Chicago's Abe Gibron didn't like it either, and he let the officials know it.
He's not allowed on the field, Adrian. Get him off the damn field.
Unless he's going to run down and cover.
He's not allowed on the field. Oh, the head coach? Yeah. The hell are you guys doing, for Christ's sake? Making a circus out of it? The hell has got to be an injury before you go on the field.
They don't have a rule against that. I think they can do it today if they want to.
Was that a 38 sweep that you ran?
The Broncos' success under John Ralston increased fan interest in Denver. And in 1975, they added a second deck on the Mile High Stadium. The highlight of the Ralston era was the first Monday night game in Denver, a game in which Billy Thompson, number 36, had a starring role.
Oh, there was a lot of big plays in that ball game that night, and I've never seen the stadium more electric than that night.
Yeah,
it was an incredible night. It's probably one of the loudest times that I could remember being here in the stadium. It would always be that thunder from the crowd that I'll always remember, that loud thunder. It was almost like a storm starting. And it'll always be with me and within me when I come through here, because it was something that was very special, and I always will treasure that.
Hold it, man! We got a game ball! We got a game ball! Hey! We got a game ball! And it's well deserved. Haven Moses! Land us to the promised land!
I call it the grand old lady.
Yeah.
She served us well.
Yes.
And we're going to miss her.
Yeah. We're going to miss the old stadium, though. You and I both. But we can reminisce a little.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the fun part of it.
Say that.
Yeah.
Before Billy Sullivan built his stadium in Foxboro, hardly anyone had heard of the place. It's a little town 40 miles south of Boston with only one major access road. So on game day, traffic backed up for miles. The stadium was built in such a hurry, they didn't have time to pave the area around it, so the parking lot was a sea of mud. And the stadium, which was originally called Schaefer Stadium, was so poorly designed, even the home team felt unwelcome.
It was built in a year. That's design and build and everything. I think most of the people that kind of knew its history and got familiar here, you knew that it was always going to be something with the stadium, one thing or another, and we all just, got used to it. The first time I came here and I went in to use the urinal, it was mounted about 4 inches higher than my waist. And apparently the plumbers just figured that they were football players, and somebody said mount them, so they just figured they were big and mounted them. So I had my own little box to stand on for a couple weeks till they finally lowered them.
My whole career here, I was one of the first ones in the shower because what a lot of the guys didn't realize was that we ran out of hot water here. And I learned that early in my career. So if it was a cold day and I wanted a hot shower, I wasn't running off the field not saying hello to anybody because I didn't want to say hello. I wanted to get the hot water before it ran out.
But I mean, it was a constant Woody Allen moment here for 30 years. You never knew what was going to happen.
The most famous chapter in Foxboro's history occurred when the Patriots hosted the Miami Dolphins on a snowy 20-degree day with winds gusting at 40 miles an hour.
There was just so much snow on the ground, nobody could get anything going. We had mostly Tutupu running the ball most of the day. Here's a kid born in Samoa, raised in Hawaii, went to school in Southern Cal. He was the most effective guy on the field that day. Go figure that one out. But it was just a day where you tried not to make any mistakes and to gain some field position. And toward the end of the game, we finally got the ball down in halfway close and had a timeout. And I remember going to John Smith, our kicker, and asking him how close he had to get to make the field goal to win it. It was 0-0 at the time, and he told me about where we needed to be. We got the ball down in that area, called another timeout, and as I came off the field, I went to Ron Meyer, the head coach, and I said, can we get the snowplow out so our guys can block, get good footing for blocking? And he said, yeah, and he grabbed me and said, go down there and tell that guy. So I went running down, waving the snowplow guy out, figuring he's going to go down the line, which he'd been doing all day, and that was perfectly legal.
But what happened next was not perfectly legal. The snowplow operator was a fellow named Mark Henderson, who just happened to be a convict freed from jail that day on a work release program. Henderson cleared a spot behind the line for John Smith to kick his game-winning field goal.
Don Shula was going berserk. Gordon McCarter was the referee, and I called him over and I said, look, if it helps you, just tell Shula that if Miami's in the same situation, we'll send the guy out there and brush the field out for them. Oh, geez, thanks a lot, he says. So he runs over and he talks to Shula, and Shula, that wasn't going to satisfy Shula because nobody was moving the ball. He knew he wasn't going to get in a position to kick a field goal.
The thing that most people don't understand is that John had already cleared his spot at 7.5 yards where he was used to kicking from. When the snowplow went by, he cleared it at 6.5 yards, covered John's spot, which to some kickers could have mentally really given them a problem. He was a yard closer than he was used to being. But John was a tough competitor. The ball got down, Matt Kavanaugh made a good hold, and John kicked it through to win it.
So then after the game, somehow or another, the Miami press found Henderson. And of course, they start on him. Do you know that Coach Shula is on the rules committee? Do you know that he's the head of the competition committee? And da-da-da. Do you know what a big violation of NFL rules this was? Now Mark sits there and he goes, well, if Coach Shula's mad at me, he goes, what are they going to do, throw me in jail?
14 years later, they were still plowing snow off the field in Foxboro. No, that isn't Mark Henderson at the controls, and what happened on this particular day didn't have anything to do with the weather. Because it was the AFC Championship game, it was a late afternoon start. So by the second quarter, it was like a night game. The Patriots were lining up for a field goal attempt when suddenly most of the lights went out.
It's too dark to play right now.
It's like a high school stadium.
Yeah.
Jerry Markman just told me it's too dark to play. I won't quote him, but it's okay to quote him, he said.
But you can quote him, he's got a penny for the fuse box.
Get away.
What can they do, fire me?
Will you just wait until the lights?
We're going to wait till the lights go back on, yes.
No matter
Unless higher ups in the league tell us that we can play.
The game was stopped for 11 minutes. Finally, the lights came back on and the game resumed. But on this play, you'll see another problem with the stadium. Our top camera location was practically in the crowd. So on a big play, the fans blocked our view.
Dude, this is like being in your house. Doesn't that stuff happen in your house? Like the power goes out, the dishwasher breaks, or something goes wrong, you trip over the rug, or the step comes loose.
Toilets back up. But it was funny though. This year though, we regressed to the old days. Took for getting in, it took forever. Getting bathrooms, it took forever. People peeing in the sink.
I mean, it's hard to treasure the actual stadium. It's an old place that had a lot of deficiencies. Great memories, but a lot of deficiencies. So I'm not going to miss the seats. I'm not going to miss the cement slab, the bad aisles, or any of that. But I'm going to miss the memories of this season. For all the glory that I've gotten this season, part of that ended when my section was torn down a few days ago.
It's a little sad to think that it won't be here anymore. Some of us have talked about the fact that we're going to have to try to figure out where the goal line was when the parking lot's all paved over here. And, until this time, you could come back and say to your kids, that's where this happened and that's when we did that, and we won't be able to do that anymore. So it is sad. But times change, and I think it was time for a change here.
This used to be the audio edit room in our old building. This is where we mixed the sound for our films, and over the years, some of the best sound was the crowd noise at Mile High Stadium. The fans would cheer and stomp and literally make the whole stadium shake. Woody Page is a Denver columnist. He wrote the book on Mile High Madness, and he revisited the old stadium with us in its final days.
Throughout America, we've gotten rid of our old things. You go to Europe and you see old buildings, palaces, castles. We have a tendency in the United States to get rid of anything that's old. And so most of our cities are modern with new buildings, new stadiums that all look alike. You always knew that you were in Mile High Stadium because of the noise, the altitude, the horse above the scoreboard, the rowdy people that were in the south stands, and what had occurred here over the years. That was the most interesting aspect, is that the Broncos and a Sunday at Mile High Stadium transcended football. It was like the world's largest church on Sunday morning, if you will. Denver in the late 60s and 70s really didn't have much going for it. Minor league hockey, minor league baseball. But in this country, you're not a major league city unless you have a big stadium and big franchises. And people adopted the Broncos, and Mile High Stadium became the cathedral for people in Denver to worship themselves, worship football, worship what the West was all about.
Noise level, I'd say if you were standing next to a 747 or an F-16 warming up or getting ready to take off, just absolutely deafening. Not only deafening from an audible perspective, but you could actually feel the audio energy.
The way that Mile High was constructed with the horseshoe effect, the enthusiasm that the fans had, the stomping of the feet, everything was orange. It's just something that if you weren't here, it's hard to experience, but if you were here, you'll never forget it.
Mile High Stadium was a marvel of engineering. It was built in 1948 for baseball, so it had to be adapted to football. And that meant moving one whole section of the east stands in for football and then back out for baseball. This enormous structure weighed more than 9 million pounds, and they would actually slide it 50 yards on a thin sheet of water. It was amazing, but what was equally amazing was the crowd that filled those seats and brought the stadium to life. The Venards and the Erferts were part of that Mile High Stadium experience, going all the way back to the 60s, and they joined us for a final look around.
What would you say was the defining characteristic of Mile High Stadium?
Comfortable.
Closeness.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, very, very close to the field. I think probably closer than any football stadium in the United States. You felt like you were right on top of the action, and I think you really felt more of a part of it.
At Mile High Stadium, the fans were so close to the field they could easily interact with the visiting teams, and often did.
64! Do a couple push-ups!
Can't hear you.
What'd you say? Hey, do a couple sit-ups! 64! Come on, baby!
Sit-ups? Thanks.
People throwing things at us, son of a bitch, like dogs. Look at them. See if you find the nickel, the money they're throwing at. People throwing money at me and everything back here. All right, that's all right. Just keep it so I don't have to take that stuff from nobody.
Abe Gibron kept his cool that day, at least until the Bears had the game won. Then Abe gave the Denver fans his own version of the Mile High salute.
Take some more yelling! Come on, try some more! Try some more! Hey, I'll come and get you by your neck! Come on, you.
I think they were inspired by the fans, and so was our team. And I want to thank the Denver fans for the inspiration, because there's nothing worse than playing again in a morgue, you know, and this is not a morgue.
When the Broncos hosted their first AFC Championship game against the Oakland Raiders, it was the greatest home field advantage I'd ever seen. The temperature was 18 degrees, which worked in the Broncos' favor. But I really believe it was the emotion of the crowd that made the biggest difference. The Raiders were the defending Super Bowl champs. Yet the Broncos fed off the energy of that crowd and won the game.
As we left, we're walking out to our car. The noise coming still from the stadium and from people coming was deafening, and it gave you chills.
We had in the north stands, right over here, we had a bottle of champagne. Right after we won the game, we popped a bottle of champagne, and everybody in our section, or right around our little area, we all sat there and stood there cheering, hollering, and drinking our little cups of champagne. Don't ask how we got the bottle in, but we had champagne after that Raiders game.
You look over your shoulder and say goodbye to the place. What are you feeling?
No, it's really sad. It's really sad. You think, gosh, we spent 36 years in the stadium. They spent 41 years in that stadium. And, you know, it's gone. It'll never be the same, but you'll always have the memories of all of those games.
And I think the people who sat here, who grew old together, who married, who passed along their tickets to their kids and to their friends, had the real concept of what Mile High Stadium was all about, what professional football was all about. It was what the Denver Broncos were all about.
After 41 years and 400 Bronco games, it finally came time to lower the curtain on Mile High Stadium.
Main reason we're here is my buddy Bob. This is his granddad. What's his name?
Thomas R. Wilson.
Thomas R. Wilson.
Original season ticket holder. He didn't get to see this, so we brought him to see the closing of the old and opening of the new.
And I think it's time for a mile-high salute to him and everybody else. What do you say?
All right.
On three. 1, 2, 3, salute! Woo!
I know. So much emotion going on. No, I know. I know. Last game here, and
Oh, I know.
you can feel it, huh?
They're waiting for you in there, man.
Oh, yeah?
Fire them up.
No, I'm not saying anything.
John Elway was there on the final day, and Coach Mike Shanahan asked him to join the team in the locker room as they brought this era of Bronco history to a close.
And the guy that not only has the most games ever played, but has won more games, more than anybody in the history of the game. And we all know what he's meant to this organization, John Elway. This may be our last game here at Mile High. Let's do it right. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
With all that emotion filling the old cathedral, the Broncos were not about to lose this final game at Mile High. The victory was a fitting tribute to a stadium where the Broncos won 24 consecutive games from 1996 through 1998. It's hard to believe this site was a landfill in the 1940s. The Broncos built their own history here and created something the Denver community held sacred. 6 Bronco fans had their ashes scattered across the field after they died. After the last game, virtually the entire crowd, more than 76,000 fans, the 250th consecutive home sellout, stayed for the closing ceremony.
I thought we were going to sell those seats. They're stealing them.
Good, they deserve them. Yeah. Everybody's still here.
Yeah.
What a great feeling.
As we listened to the cheers, I thought back to another night in Mile High Stadium, a summer night in 1983 when I first saw John Elway as a rookie quarterback in a preseason game against Atlanta. He was playing behind the veteran Steve DeBerg at the time, but when he entered the game in the second half, that's when the crowd came to life. It was obvious right away. Elway was every bit as good as advertised. He was big and mobile, and he had the strongest arm I'd ever seen. The other Broncos saw it too. They didn't treat Elway like other rookies. Most rookies are hazed, right? Well, look at this. Elway had valet service, but it was easy to understand. From the moment Elway arrived, the franchise rode on his shoulders. And over the course of 16 seasons, we watched him mature into the winningest quarterback in NFL history. He won 148 regular season games and took the Broncos to 5 Super Bowls. When people recall Mile High Stadium, they'll think about John Elway and all those fourth quarter comebacks. Mile High was a great stage, and while John didn't build it, he certainly came to own it.
You know, I think that as time goes, it's always sad to see all these old stadiums go. I mean, Mile High went, and now Foxboro going. And when you look at Denver, and I think of the Denver Broncos, it's a relationship that there's very few like them in the NFL. I'm not sure that there's a love affair between the fans and an NFL franchise like there is in Denver. And I think that's what's really neat about it. Sure, they're fans that get upset when you don't play well, but they never leave you. You know, they never disown you. They're always there, and they're always loyal. And it's almost like I'm kind of the adopted son of Denver, because when I got there, I was 23 years old and young, and you know, we've had our ups and downs, and the relationship's been rocky, and it's been great, and it's been rocky, and it's been great. But I think that when you look at Denver, it's a big city, but it's got a small-town atmosphere, and to have that attitude, and to be around a part of that, and to be there for a long, long time, it was very important to me. To finish my career in Denver is very important. So it's been an awesome relationship and something I'll cherish forever.
The closing ceremony at Mile High was a bittersweet evening. The fans and players embraced and lingered in the moment.
Everybody realized that was the end for Mile High Stadium. I was here until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I wrote a column about you could almost hear the crowd. I could hear, and I think it was wind, but in my mind it'll always be the ghosts of Mile High Stadium that were talking to me and telling me what had gone on here from 1948 to 2000.
that era, that mystique that old Mile High Stadium had for various reasons, I don't think it's going to be replicated in the new stadium here at Invesco Field or the stadiums around the country, because of that's just one era that's going to be lost, I think, and those are going to be great memories.
The final game at Foxboro Stadium was one for the ages. Adam Vinatieri kicked a 45-yard field goal through a blinding snowstorm to tie the playoff game against Oakland. Then, without the benefit of Mark Henderson and his snowplow, Vinatieri kicked another field goal in overtime to win the game and send the Patriots on their way to Super Bowl 36. Just 2 days later, the demolition of the old stadium began. In February, when we returned, the Patriots were Super Bowl champions, but their home field was just a pile of rubble.
That Monday, we started clearing out the concession stands, taking signage down, clearing out anything of value, getting all the equipment back to whoever owned it, and getting ready for the knockdown. We were thrilled that the team got into the playoffs, that we couldn't get started earlier, but we had everybody all set. We had all of our plans in place. We had everybody lined up. We turned everybody loose, and we got going.
It was surprising to see how quickly the old stadium came down. But the Patriots had a schedule to keep. Their new facility, Gillette Stadium, was due to open in July, and the old field had to be paved over for parking. Still, letting go wasn't easy.
It's very sad, but life moves on, and the memory bank of relationships and events that have happened here, a very special part of my life and something that I'll treasure forever.
For a guy who's been a season ticket holder since 1972, this has to be an awfully nice moment, Bob.
This is for all the fans out here who waited 37 years. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I think anyone who's privileged to own an NFL franchise is really a custodian of an asset for that community.
Thanks for assembling such a great team. We're so appreciative. Well, now we got to win today. That's right. We got to make a lot of noise when they're
When the people are in the stands here, black, white, no matter what their religion, they're rooting for the team. And it doesn't matter if the player is from Samoa, from Africa, or from Alabama. Everyone's pulling for the home team. That's on all socioeconomic levels. And that's the part of the treat of owning a team, that if you do a good job, you help to pull the community together in a way that I don't think anything else does.
We poked fun at Foxboro Stadium in this show and pointed out its shortcomings. And let's face it, it was all true. Foxboro Stadium wasn't a showplace any more than this old film vault was a showplace. But this is where the idea for the Lost Treasures series originated. We had over 100 million feet of film stored here, and we knew there was some great material just waiting to be found. I guess the bottom line is that Foxboro Stadium and this place got the Patriots and NFL films from where we were in the 1970s to where we are today. And when you think about it, that's a pretty good legacy.
I was telling our son on the way down, you know, it took his grandfather 12 years to make that happen, and you know, it's taken 3 or 4 months to take it down. You know, that's progress. 15 million people came through this place in one way, shape, or form, between Patriot games and Revolution games and concerts. You know, I'd say it served the community very well.
There is a pang, there is a sadness that it's gone. Not the charm and not the same feeling you had towards you know, a Fenway or a Boston Garden, but it did its job, you know, and you know, we look right there and you can see the brand new stadium, and you know, we'd only have that because we had this, and I think that's how you have to look at it.
And you know what? In spite of all the screw-ups, they did make it to 3 Super Bowls and finally won the most improbable football season I've ever seen. If ever a stadium was to end, and end with a group of people that represent the stadium, just about get-by type of people, just about a get-by stadium, yet they win it all. It's the most amazing story of them all.
I think a lot of people this year, they were looking past the Patriots to go anywhere, you know, forget about the Super Bowl, but a lot of the fans, too, were looking forward to the new stadium. So we kind of forgot about the old girl back here, and to have her go out like this was something that no one ever expected, and it was a tremendous gift.
This is really ironic that the Patriots entered Foxboro Stadium as the worst team in the NFL. They came off a 2-12 season in 1970. They opened the stadium against the Oakland Raiders, a nice 20-6 upset victory, which my dad took me to. To finish this season, I ended up taking my dad to the last game ever here, another victory over the Oakland Raiders, but this time we leave as the best team in the world. And just what a great way. It's so nice to have this stadium get a championship. It deserved it for, you know, all these years.
And it's funny because the last game that was played here ended up being the game that everybody's going to remember. And it's almost like it was like this Hollywood ending, this place that didn't really have any ESPN Classic type games or really anything that you can hang your hat on. And then the last game ends up being one of the most famous playoff games, I think, in recent NFL history.
And even after the game ended, took me probably 25 or 30 minutes to get out of my section because nobody wanted to leave. It was like it was the last game, and it was won in such a fantastic fashion that the fans couldn't believe it had happened that way, and they didn't want to lose the whole feeling that was taking place right there.
Imagine going to a wake, an Irish one, because we're here in the Boston area. Everyone's standing around the coffin, drink in hand, toasting. That's the way Foxboro Stadium went out, and it was perfect.
ESPN